Good afternoon, everyone. We're running about 10 minutes behind schedule, so thanks for sticking with us. My name's Sam Kernahan. I'm the Director of the Committee for Sydney's Resilience Program. And one of the priorities of the committee, as we heard earlier, is to identify opportunities in the climate transition. Specifically, how can our journey towards net zero drive innovation and economic value for business, government and the community? Waste contributes to as much as 14% of our climate emissions. We're currently rapidly running out of landfill, and we're missing opportunities to benefit from the materials that we currently throw away. A growing response to these challenges is the creation of a circular economy. This means moving away from a mindset that managing waste is how we dispose of products after we use them. A circular economy requires us to redesign products to be less resource intensive and to use waste as an input to the manufacture of new materials. Recent analysis by PwC suggests that within a few decades, the benefit of a circular economy to Australia could be as much as $200 billion and create an additional 17,000 jobs. But what does this mean for Sydney, now and into the future? Today, I have the privilege of introducing someone who not only talks about using waste as a resource, but has been instrumental in showing how it can be done, producing a new generation of green materials, products and resources made entirely or primarily from waste. A materials scientist, engineer, inventor and TV personality, Professor Veena Sahajwalla is the founding director of the Centre for Sustainable Materials, Research and Technology at the University of New South Wales. In 2018, Veena launched the world's first e-waste microfactory here in Sydney. And in 2019, she launched her plastics microfactory, a recycling technology breakthrough that has created products used by some of Sydney's leading businesses. Last month, these achievements contributed to Veena being recognised as the New South Wales Australian of the Year. So does Sydney have what it takes to be a global circular economy exemplar? Please give a warm welcome to our final speaker, Professor Veena Sahajwalla.
Thanks very much, Sam, for that very kind introduction. And I'd like to, first of all, begin by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I've had the privilege to collaborate with many researchers, and I want to acknowledge the fact that I learned so much from researchers, not just here in Sydney, but globally. But I guess it sort of comes back to this point about how do we in Sydney see our role and connectivity with the rest of the world, and can we actually be that exemplar city? What is it, the one thing that we all care about? We care about our family, our friends, our people. So we've heard, of course, all morning around social issues. We also care about our environment. Young people particularly are asking lots of questions, and all of us have started to ask lots of questions around what happens to our waste. Is it really a waste material, or is it a resource? So I guess part of this question in terms of connectivity and how do we actually demonstrate our leadership is to be able to make this point that this is the place where not only we do research and we have those conversations, but we bring our intellect, our practical experience, our heart, and our hands to the solution. So this is where, of course, new jobs come in. And what are these jobs going to look like in the future if waste is going to be part of the solution? And you might say, well, hang on, wait a minute, how can waste be part of the solution when we've been calling it as a problem? Well, here's what I'm about to tell you. It's actually not a problem, it's actually an opportunity. I mean, when you actually say that your phone stops working, let me use that simple example. That doesn't mean that all the materials that went into making that phone are no longer useful. When your computer doesn't work anymore, the hard drive that actually is present still contains those magnets that are still rich in rare earths. So imagine what we're really talking about here. All these important metals, rare earths, plastics, glass, all of this is actually useful, even if it doesn't function as a product anymore. So what we are really saying is if we are to create new jobs in the future, we have to start to see these new resources. We have to start to show that actually our planet can rely upon resources in this new format to create value. And value is, again, how do we define value? Do we define value based on how we look after our people? So that means we have to provide the right kind of services. We've heard about that. We create value by creating new jobs. So I guess in all of this, how we care for our environment, and this whole sort of circular future that we're talking about, we need to understand that technologies can play an important role. But this is where, of course, we need to start to imagine our technologies, the usual sort of, here's where it happens in a big centralized facility somewhere. Well, what I'm here to actually tell you is that, no, actually, you can create value by creating more sustainable solutions, by actually producing materials and products from waste resources. So this is where, of course, when we start to think about circular economy in action, that's what we mean. It is about ultimately addressing this as a holistic question. Can we actually produce important materials? Can we create new jobs? Can we actually imagine this whole sort of ecosystem that we've been talking about of the 6 cities model, where we're creating new jobs, where we're all part of that supply chain? So ultimately, if we are ever making this point that there's not enough bicycle production right here in Australia, that's kind of not a very good thing to be able to mention, because you know what? We should be able to make enough of these types of products by taking waste metals and putting that back into new products again. So it's not as if we don't have the resources. We've got all the waste metals, we've got all the waste plastics and so on. We've got the capacity to do 3D printing. We've got the capacity to make all of this. Well, where is the missing piece in the puzzle? The missing piece in the puzzle is that we're taking all these products at the end of their lives, whether they are indeed our broken computers and bicycles and plastics and so on. We're putting it away as a waste. But then on the other hand, we're going, wait a minute, there are limits to what the supply chain can actually do in terms of meeting our needs. But what we're actually not seeing is that one possible way forward is that joining these dots. And joining these dots and connecting it through these kinds of circular solutions means that we're all part of the solution. What that then means is, first and foremost, we might have created a product that comes from waste in a lab, but who benefits from that? Local governments benefit because they've got to deal with the waste resources. Designers, manufacturers benefit because they've suddenly now started to create more jobs locally. Remember, we're going to create more and more jobs if we can actually meet some of those demands locally through local production. And these are the full spectrum of jobs, whether they're making your bikes or electronic devices or indeed products for our built environment. So then who benefits as part of that? All of us, back again as end users, we benefit. So we shouldn't have to see price rises as a result of supply chain difficulties that we've been hearing through the last couple of years in COVID. Maybe this is what we need to evaluate. Is there a way in which we can think about circular solutions through collaboration and innovation? And I thought I'd give you a simple example. What I'm holding up here is an example of a green ceramic tile, the reference to our microfactory at UNSW, made from waste glass and textiles. At the end of the day, one might say, well, that's great, great innovative product, fabulous science, all of the good stuff, yep. But what does this actually mean in terms of jobs? What does it actually mean in terms of opportunities? And of course, practically addressing some of the challenges of waste. What we have indeed shown in all of this is we've transformed waste into value. What we've actually shown is that by setting up these types of connectivities across this entire ecosystem, whether it is our steelmaking partner in Newcastle, whether it is our manufacturer of green ceramics in Nowra and Shoalhaven region, whether it is, of course, a whole range of industry partners in Sydney, we've got that entire region where we can look at the opportunities to be able to create. Yes, it is the green steel and green aluminium and green ceramics. What does this all mean? Why does it matter? It matters because all of these types of resources that we are calling our waste is actually coming out of our homes, our offices. Think about how many times we replace our electronic devices. Think about all of those data servers. All the time we have to do refurb in our built environment, replacing ceramic products. all of these can actually be locally manufactured. And the important message in this is that, yes, it is about connecting the dots between waste resources. We all know waste textiles as an example of a material that we're all concerned about. We all know that. We've all heard about all kinds of e-waste. And we've also heard the fact that in many instances, we've been exporting and sending away our waste resources overseas, which of course we all realize that is not necessarily the right thing to do. We can't be exporting our problematic materials. But what if we said that these are not problematic materials? All of this waste, glass, everything that we use as consumers, these are not problematic. These are actually useful materials. So the fact that you might have all of this global supply of apparel, first and foremost, we've got to address that fundamental consumerism question. Yes, we have to reduce and reuse, repair, but we have to ultimately look at when all of these products reach end of life, they don't have to become a burden to our society. And so in doing that, what we have shown in partnership with industries, you see from some of these pictures, is that it is possible to be able to transform a lot of these kinds of materials. And this is where our collaboration with our end users comes in, whether it's about putting these green ceramics into our flooring applications or walling applications, as you see there. These are all examples of how innovation can actually deliver benefits. So I did tell you that we're looking to set up our microfactories. It started about a year ago where we had shown that we can commission a microfactory in a regional community right here in New South Wales, creating these kinds of green ceramic products. The research born out of UNSW was able to be translated and picked up. This microfactory has now been producing, so this is now where the question, of course, upscale, because you might say, well, it's a microfactory. Really, can you scale it up? And the short answer is yes, because the whole notion that decentralized solutions, where you've got supply chains connecting all of these material resources, and we're part of that. So when a local council is picking up our waste, we've actually contributed to that waste glass, for instance. That's then part of a supply chain where that ends up in a microfactory that then produces these products that can then add more and more modules and production capacity, whether it is along the southern part of the state or indeed in Sydney or indeed as we're doing with green steel in Newcastle. So all of these are just examples of where products can in fact be manufactured locally in these tiny microfactories. And this, by the way, the one that's running is actually in our basement. Lots of good things come out of basement. So this is an example of what we did, literally bit by bit, developing these modules, and actually what you see there are all the things that we've heard about this morning. Creating new jobs, creating solutions that enable people to work close to home, which means that you can actually imagine a future where you're part of that supply chain. You've actually created those local jobs. You could be actually collecting, processing a lot of these materials, being part of that supply chain where at the end you're creating materials and products, of course, that are value added for our society. So ultimately, when we are talking about circularity, what does it mean for our economy? It means that we've created those decentralized jobs. We've taken waste away from landfill, put that into our productive economy. And of course, we've reduced our carbon footprint, because every time we use recycled materials, we know that we are reducing our carbon footprint. And in doing so, of course, what we are doing is creating a whole new way of thinking about what waste actually is. That it's not a problem, it's actually an opportunity, it's a valuable resource. So in doing so, what we are, of course, ultimately creating is bringing together pieces of the puzzle. And that modularity of these types of decentralized operations means that you can set this up close to where materials are being collected. So it might be a local council facility. It might be indeed a manufacturer who's looking to make certain products, who is interested in saying, well, I've got a 3D printer and I really want to be able to manufacture products made out of high quality polymers. And believe it or not, that's exactly what we've done. High quality plastics coming from our e-waste sources, our printers and so on, allowing us to produce these types of solutions. So these are examples of what can be done. What you're seeing there on the left-hand side are waste plastics. You're seeing plastic filaments being produced and being used, of course, in a 3D printer. So you can imagine whether it is producing bike parts, metallic parts, and this, of course, is doing 3D printing made out of plastic filaments for plastic products. But again, why do we talk about all of this? Is there a reason? Let's talk about the underpinning recycling economics here. Because, of course, we've got to be able to have the underpinning economics coupled with the social benefits so you can actually create those new jobs. Waste, of course, is a relatively low-value material. It is a resource that's waiting to be harnessed. So in this particular case, just have a look. Your plastic filaments are now worth at least about $30 a kilogram. And it could be upwards from there. Once you start to do 3D printing, you've now created an entire ecosystem where businesses, big and small, are empowered to not only do their own prototyping, but to innovate. To be part of a global supply chain, you can actually show to the world that we're producing sustainable materials and products right here in Sydney. And that is doable. This is exactly what we are seeing. We've got resources, we've got materials. Sydney is the place where we can actually already start to show that these types of connectivities are possible. But the world is demanding more and more sustainable materials. So imagine, this all has a ripple effect on training and basically showing as to how innovation can be translated into practice. And this is exactly what we are doing with various businesses. These are examples of products that we have 3D printed. We've got businesses that are, of course, starting to use these products. So it also credit due to a lot of those businesses that are then saying, okay, well, you know what? We will be walking the talk, which means if we can potentially buy products that are made from 100% recycled materials, then we will do it. Now, of course, this means that one has to challenge that myth that says, oh, but if something is recycled, if something's made from waste, surely it must be poor quality. It can't be right. How can something from waste be of superior quality and functional and can meet the demands, industrial demands, consumer demands? And in fact, again, what we have proven is that materials that come from waste are not indeed poor quality. Our green steel application, where we use waste tires and replaced a significant amount of coal that goes in, we've actually shown that that is far more efficient as a process, has helped us reduce our carbon footprint. Our next step, that journey of producing green aluminium from a whole lot of waste packaging, is another example. So not only are we decarbonizing, we're actually producing high quality products. Where does all the science come from? Right here. And this is the important point. We can show that we are the place where we understand how science, technology, jobs can all come together. And of course, getting that excitement and that buzz, because when somebody, as I was presenting one year in Berlin, asking about these high-quality zinc-based materials for a specific product, guess what they were shopping around for? They were shopping around for the most sustainably produced high-quality feedstock for their manufacturing. They were prepared to go and look across the world. And I think that's what the future is, where people are going to ask these questions. It's not always the lowest cost material and product, but it's going to be around those products that are made sustainably, those products that can then be recycled and reformed over and over again. So these are examples of why I'm talking about packaging. Again, you may not have realized, but it's a rich source of metals. And these are all everyday things that come from our offices and from our homes, our coffee pods and so on. We've actually shown that it is possible to create these green metals. And of course, the complexity of that ecosystem means that Sydney has it all. We actually do have manufacturing capacity. We do have all of this ability to indeed produce those products and access materials. I mean, Ewaste is a great example of the fact that, yes, of course, we are producing. We don't need to look too far, right? We all have devices right here with us. We all have them in our homes and in our offices. So the fact that we've got all of these devices producing these important materials is important to reflect on the fact that actually our waste-printed circuit boards, if you pick up just that one example, is much, much better and richer source of metals, like in this case, we're talking about copper and tin, compared to the ore. that you mine. So why would you not actually go back and harvest your circuit boards, for instance? Why would you not do that? This is a great opportunity for us to do that locally. This is a great opportunity in terms of where our new jobs are coming from, our industry partners who are actually looking at lots of these materials, coming from our waste batteries, coming from, for example, our different kinds of solutions in our batteries, like the ones that are rich, for instance, in cobalt. There are lots of other things that we can do. Look at our rare earths. Businesses that are saying it is absolutely possible to set up these microfactories, harvest these hard drives as a rich source, for instance, of rare earths. So these are the opportunities when the world is actually crying out for some of these important materials. And right here in Sydney, we can actually show the world how to lead and play a leading role in these types of solutions, which means research, training, technology, jobs, and of course, businesses have to work in collaboration. And this is exactly what we're starting to show, is that our ability and our capacity to reform our waste materials means that we've got to look beyond those traditional 3 Rs of reduce, reuse, recycle. We actually know very well that in some instances that works. Converting a standard PET water bottle into more PET water bottle is a great way to recycle like for like. But what if you've got these complex hard drives and electronic devices and textiles? We know traditional solutions are not enough. We're seeing a lot of these materials that are not being reformed and put towards manufacturing and remanufacturing. So what we are really talking about here is the opportunity to take these things out of the lab, the small-scale innovative solutions where we train our students, we do our research, but actually take them out into real-world solutions. And I guess for us, acknowledging, of course, that underpinning research funding from the state, for example, in this case, the physical sciences funding, the fundamental research from the Australian Research Council, all of that is the critical pathway to showing that we can have technologies and economies that are fit for purpose. So I'd like to probably just finish off by saying that when we talk about circular economy solutions, what we have to think about is those holistic solutions that are ultimately based on the foundation where we are talking about economies for purpose. And the purpose here is, yes, to create new jobs, yes, to create jobs that are going to be sustainable. What does that mean? We look after people and we look after our planet by caring for each other and caring for our planet. Thank you very much.